Lewis Hamilton's highly anticipated Ferrari debut was anything but smooth. His first weekend with the Scuderia turned out to be far more challenging than he had envisioned, struggling to match Charles Leclerc's pace early on. As the weekend progressed, he clawed back time, inching closer to his teammate. But that was just the beginning of the drama. What unfolded between Hamilton and his race engineer during the Australian Grand Prix took everyone by surprise. The tension, the frustration, the unexpected radio messages. It all built up to a shocking moment that has fans wondering if cracks are already forming at Ferrari. Is this just part of Hamilton's adjustment period, or the start of something much bigger? What happened after the race will leave you speechless. Despite his struggles in practice, Hamilton managed to deliver his strongest performance in qualifying, finishing just 0.18 seconds behind Leclerc in Q3. However, Ferrari's promising pace came with a major drawback. Over a single lap, their car was far harsher on its tyres than the McLaren, Red Bull and Mercedes. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen and George Russell made the most of their more balanced setups, leaving Ferrari vulnerable heading into the race. Lining up 8th on the grid for a rain-soaked Melbourne Grand Prix, Hamilton had little reason to celebrate his debut with the Scuderia. Leclerc wasted no time slicing past Alex Albon's Williams, but Hamilton found himself stuck behind the Thai driver's rear wing, unable to make the same swift progress. His struggles persisted up until the first round of pit stops, leaving him fighting an uphill battle rather than making the statement he had hoped for in his first race in Ferrari red. Throughout this phase of the race, Hamilton's radio was anything but quiet. His engineer, Riccardo Adami, repeatedly reminded him to activate K1 Ferrari's boost button for extra electrical power. Having spent over a decade with Peter Bonington's familiar voice in his ear at Mercedes, Hamilton seemed visibly irked by Adami's persistent input. It wasn't a case of inexperience. Adami had previously guided Sebastian Vettel and Carlos Sainz, but for Lewis, the constant chatter was clearly wearing thin. By lap 15, Hamilton finally asked for assistance. "Let me know where I'm slow. I'm struggling with drivability. The car is snappy," he radioed in. The response was swift. His issues were pinpointed to turns 11 and 12, accompanied by a flood of technical jargon that, to anyone outside the Ferrari garage, might as well have been ancient hieroglyphics. But it was the repeated K1 reminders that really tested Hamilton's patience. His response? A sharp, "Leave me to it." The tone was unmistakable, reminiscent of Kimi Raikkonen's legendary "Leave me alone, I know what I'm doing" moment in Abu Dhabi 2013. The message was clear. Hamilton didn't need hand-holding, and he certainly wasn't in the mood for constant reminders in his first Ferrari outing. Hamilton's frustration only grew as he remained stuck behind the Williams, unable to make the progress he wanted. On lap 29, his engineer once again chimed in with a tip to help him overtake. "To avoid denying DRS, we suggest upshift and then DRS," Adami advised. But Hamilton, now clearly running low on patience, shot back, "Yes, I know, leave me to it." The issue wasn't DRS, and he didn't need reminding. Just 3 laps later, Adami was back with another suggestion, this time urging Hamilton to use K1 once again. The response was immediate. "I'm not close enough to deploy it," Lewis replied, shutting down the advice before his engineer could push further. The back and forth over the radio painted a clear picture. Hamilton wasn't just battling the Williams ahead, he was also wrestling with an engineering team still figuring out his preferred style of communication. As the race entered its closing stages, teams began warning their drivers about incoming rain. Adami, in his distinctively Italian-accented English, reassured Hamilton that it would be short, sharp and sweet. Ferrari decided to keep him out, gambling on the rain passing quickly, while others dove into the pits for intermediates. It turned out to be the wrong call. With several drivers already on wet weather tyres, the sudden crashes of Liam Lawson and Gabriel Bortoleto sealed Ferrari's fate. By the time Hamilton and Leclerc were finally instructed to pit, they had slipped dangerously close to the back of the lead lap runners. What had started as a strategic risk ended up as a costly blunder, one that left Hamilton's Ferrari debut in Melbourne as forgettable as it was frustrating. By lap 48 of 57, Hamilton had fully grasped the gravity of Ferrari's strategic misstep. Frustrated, he fired a pointed question at his engineer. "I thought you said it wasn't going to rain much. We missed a big opportunity there." The irritation in his voice was unmistakable. As reality set in, he sought clarity on his position. "What position am I back in? P9? A beat later, realizing his radio was still live and aware of the FIA's crackdown on driver language, he quickly added, "Shit, sorry, didn't realize the radio was on." The damage was done, but at that point, a swear word was the least of his concerns. While it's early days for the Hamilton-Adami partnership, the Italian engineer's radio communication has long been a topic of debate, even back when he worked with Vettel and Sainz. His delivery has often felt awkward and unclear, and now with Hamilton expecting precision in high-pressure moments, the cracks were showing. Whether Adami remains in this role for the long haul is now an open question, but one thing was clear: Lewis wasn't thrilled with the support he received. Speaking to the media after the race, Hamilton didn't hold back. "I hung out for as long as I could and got the lead at one point, but the guidance, just in terms of how much more rain was coming, was missing there. So I think we missed out." The words were measured, but the message was obvious. Ferrari's call had cost him, and the communication needed serious improvement. Hamilton reflected on the costly strategy blunder with a resigned shrug. "The information I got was that it was just a short shower, quick, and at the time it was only in the last corner. So for me, I was like, well, if the rest of the track is dry, I can keep this on track if that's coming." But then more came. The frustration was clear. Ferrari's weather call had been off the mark, and Hamilton had been left to deal with the consequences. While his words were measured, the underlying message was clear. There's still a long road ahead before he feels truly at home at Ferrari. Beating Charles Leclerc is one thing, but Hamilton's eyes are set on something far bigger: that record-breaking 8th world title. Right now, however, it's evident that getting comfortable in his new surroundings is just as big a challenge as fighting at the front. "It felt like I was in the deep end today," he admitted, summing up his turbulent debut. "Everything was new, first time driving it in the rain, and the car felt completely different to what I've experienced before. The power unit, the steering functions, the things they're throwing at you mid-race, you're just trying to juggle it all." His frustrations with the car were evident. Describing it as really hard to drive today, Hamilton admitted he spent most of the race just trying to keep it on track. "I'm just grateful I kept it out of the wall because that's where it wanted to go most of the time," he added, summing up a race where survival seemed like the biggest achievement. Leclerc didn't have it much easier. Ferrari's questionable strategy saw both drivers left on slicks as the rain intensified, long after their rivals had switched to intermediates. Leclerc then spun, a moment that seemingly forced Ferrari to reconsider their approach. When the pair eventually pitted for wet tyres, Leclerc rejoined behind Hamilton, but quickly found his footing, showing far more confidence in the treacherous conditions. He breezed past his teammate and recovered to P8, while Hamilton salvaged a single point in P10, hardly the dream start he had envisioned with Ferrari. Watching from afar, Christian Horner couldn't resist taking a jab at Ferrari's sluggish response to the worsening conditions. "I think you've always got to react very much to what's going on around you," the Red Bull boss smirked. "And when it's pouring down in the pit lane, it's usually a good time to put some wet tyres on." It was a brutal yet painfully accurate assessment of Ferrari's decision-making, one that Hamilton likely shared, even if he wasn't saying it outright. Was Hamilton right to be frustrated with Ferrari's calls, or should he take more responsibility for his struggles in Melbourne? Let us know in the comments. Until next time, goodbye for now.